Hi all, welcome. We'll wait a minute or two for people to continually join. So hang tight and we'll get going in just a second. All right. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll wait just one more minute for a couple more people to join and then we'll get started. So thanks for your patience and welcome. More people joining, great. All right, wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Paul Kronzer. I am with Ascent. We are part of the project team here for the Sunnyvale Village Center project. Tonight we are going to be discussing some different concepts. This is workshop number 3 in a series that we've had over the past couple months. Thank you those who have maybe joined in workshop 2 last week for coming again. We appreciate your participation and comments. Again, before we dive into the presentation tonight, I just want to let you all know that the chat is open for the presentation and throughout the meeting. So if you guys do have any comments regarding logistics that we can hopefully help answer for you during the meeting, definitely let us know. And then we're going to be using that chat function when we get into breakout rooms as well to help spur conversation for you all to provide comments and questions to our facilitators. So with that, we're actually going to test out the chat. So for those participants who joined us in the lower right hand corner of your screen, you should see a little icon that looks like chat. If you want to click on that, and then let's all enter in what you guys had for dinner tonight or plan on having for dinner maybe later on after the meeting. We'll just get everybody familiar with that function. So if you're in the breakout room and you'd like to make a comment, definitely go ahead and do so using the chat. And then we'll get rolling here. So I haven't eaten yet, so I want to see what you all have eaten. So let me bring it up here. Oh man, I knew I chose the wrong question because I'm always hungry when I see your responses. Great, so you guys all seem to be pros at this, as many of us are after a lot of Zoom meetings over the past couple of years. But this is great. Thanks for dropping that in quick, and we'll move on. And I'm going to hand it actually over to Sean, who's going to do an introduction and welcome from the city. So Sean, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Mendrin. I am the planning officer, and I'm working on the Village Center Master Plan along with a group from Ascent. We have some city staff here, Asta, Kelly Cha, and Momo. Both are all planners with the planning division, and then our consultant team is Christine, An, Matt, Angela, and Paul. And we're all here to help out and facilitate the meeting tonight. And on tonight's agenda, we're going to go over the master plan goals and objectives, give you some legislative background on some state legislation that have helped guide and drive the Village Center Master Plan, talk about the Village Centers, talk about Workshop 1 themes, give you some preliminary concept plans to discuss, and then go out into breakout rooms for activity and discussion.
Wonderful, great. Thank you, Sean. Before we jump into the presentation by our project team, we'd just like to do a quick polling session just to get a sense of who's in the room with us tonight. These are quick couple-minute surveys that we're going to do interactively as a group, and I'll guide you through some of these questions. You'll be able to see the responses, and then we're going to move on to the presentation. So with that, If everybody can either have their phone open or another computer screen window, and you can go to either slido.com or hold your phone up to the QR code there, scan that, and it'll prompt a little survey that we're going to go through here. And once I see people on, I will click and get started. So with that, you guys should see this screen come up. I'm going to try it on my end too, just to make sure. And so you should be able to click join event. And then the multiple choice questions are going to pop up on your screen or your phone there. And you're going to go ahead and select. So the first question that we have tonight is, which village center do you see the most? Village center 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. So if you want to go ahead and enter that in, we'll get some results here popping up on the screen. Number 4, it looks like in the chat. That's a good response since we're talking about 4, 5, 6, and 7 tonight. Let's see. So we should be seeing screen or some of these results populate here in just a second. One and 2. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. Look at that. So it looks like Village Center 5 is the winner right now. Got some great results here. And coming in close second and third are 6 and 7, all of which we're going to be talking about tonight. So that's great. We'll leave one more second here for people to take the poll, and then we'll move on. Okay, great. So next question, what is your relationship to these village centers? So you don't have to choose just one, you can pick one or more. A would be I live in one of the village center location areas. B, I own a business and or property in a village center location area. C, I work in the village center location area. D, I visit the location or the village centers for its restaurant, shops, and social amenities. And then E, I visit family and friends in the village center location area. Awesome. And thank you those using chat too. That's a great way to put in your feedback. And it looks like a good majority of everyone here visits the village centers for the restaurants, shops, or social amenities. So wonderful. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. And this question is in regards to the first workshop we had. And this was a little bit further back, not the workshop from last week, but there was a survey that was conducted. And we're just trying to get a sense of who participated in that first outreach effort that we did. Thank you, those who responded. Okay, so wait one more second here. And I think we've got one more after this. Great, so about a quarter did and about 3/4 didn't. Wonderful. Okay, so this is a fun one. This is going to appear as a word cloud. So in your little box, you should be able to type in what your vision for the village centers would be. And you'll see words starting to appear here on our screen. And as people type in the same words from different places, you'll see that word become a little bit more prominent. So we'll be able to see kind of what's rising to the top here in regards to vision for these village centers. So you can use 1 or 2 words and type it as many times as you'd like. So Housing busy, services. And good comments too in the chat. That's great. Looks like we got people typing still, so this is wonderful. Great feedback. I'm seeing walkability kind of be a one that is voiced a couple times. Housing, that's popping up. All right. Walkable and housing. Wonderful. Nice. Great feedback, everyone. Thank you. So we got a couple more people typing, and walkable is definitely the front runner so far. Okay. Housing and walkable. So the walkability and housing for the areas, I think that's great. Okay, we got one more person typing, and I think we're there. Okay. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to hand it over to Sean and Christine. And Sean, over to you.
All right, thanks, Christine. Thanks, Paul. Tonight, again, we're going to go over the Village Center Master Plan Workshop 2. The point of the master plan goals and objectives is to implement a village mixed use designation within the land use and transportation elements associated goals and policies, which allow the following in each of the 7 village centers. Building heights up to 3 and 4 stories, stepping down to adjacent single-story neighborhoods. Average residential density of up to 18 units per acre, allowing for a range of unit types and sizes, and a mix of uses including commercial components equal to a minimum of 10% of the lot area, up to a maximum of 25% of the lot area. And the other component is to provide development concepts to demonstrate how the village centers can be transformed into active mixed-use nodes connected by pedestrian, bike, and transit networks while creating local identity and a sense of place. And so as Paul mentioned, we do have 7 village centers. Tonight's workshop is basically the northern half, which is broken at Central Expressway. So we have Village Center 4, which is North Mathilda and West Maud Avenue. And then it also includes a small commercial strip across from Bishop Elementary School on Maud. Village Center 5 is located at Duane and San Rafael over by the redeveloped AMD site over off of Duane and Lawrence Expressway. Village Center 6 is at Lakehaven Drive and Lawrence Expressway. That is an existing commercial center. And again, it's located on the west side of Lawrence Expressway at Lakehaven. And Village Center 7 is at Fair Oaks and Tasman Drive. The east side of Village Center 7 has already been redeveloped with a mixed-use development with retail on the ground floor and residential units above. On the west side of Fair Oaks is an existing commercial strip, which we are looking to include in Village Center 7 for future redevelopment. Christine, next slide. So for some legislative background, there's been some things that have changed since the Village Center Master Plan concept was introduced in the Land Use and Transportation Element update back in 2017. First is Senate Bill 330, which requires objective design standards to be used when evaluating residential development. It does prohibit downzoning, so general plan land use and intensity standards are enforceable even if inconsistent with the zoning, and they can't be changed or downzoned, so you can't go from 18 units to 16 units per acre. And it does establish timelines for approvals for project applications. What this implies with the master plan process is that we'll provide updated zoning and a toolkit of objective design and development standards as called for in the general plan and consistent with SB 330 to ensure quality design and the integration into the surrounding neighborhoods. Another assembly bill called 2011 was also adopted, and it was called the Affordable Housing and High Road Jobs Act of 2022. It took a little while for it to get through the process, and it's intended to permit residential development on sites currently zoned and designated for commercial or retail uses. It was signed and adopted in September of 2022, and it goes into effect on July 1st of this year. What implications that has on the master plan process is it provides an alternate path for streamlined approval for multifamily living and mixed use, mixed income and affordable projects. It establishes a density minimum at 30 dwelling units per acre, and development standards do apply. It doesn't require parking except for bike parking and accessible ADA spaces. It provides for an exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act, which is how we handle environmental review for all projects. And then it also includes labored standards or thresholds for construction standards. Next slide, Christine. Another element that the city is also working on is an update to our housing element. The village centers are identified in the housing element as moderately affordable sites. We have to update the housing element every 8 years, and we're currently in that cycle. We have formulated a draft and sent it to the state or Department of Housing and Community Development with the California state for review and comment. Feedback that we have received so far from the state is that sites are too concentrated in the northern part of the city. From a fair housing perspective, more higher density housing opportunities should be created in the southern part of the city. Sites should be zoned for higher intensity to meet housing needs, and also take into consideration comments from housing advocates such as allow more housing capacity and consider adding a village center at Hollenbeck and Homestead. And for the Village Center Master Plan process, what this all rolls up into is that we're supposed to look for ways to increase housing capacity. Sorry, the bird. Village Centers 1 through 3. The LUT identifies an average height of 3 to 4 stories, but in order to increase the density per housing, the state housing comments, we'll look at considering allowing up to 5 stories while focusing on standards for transitions and setbacks and high quality design. Allow for a variety of housing types to create a complete community, including single family, townhomes, apartments, and mixed use infill. And mixed use infill means usually residential, commercial square footage on the ground floor with residential above. Integrate requirements for commercial and retail uses, and incorporate gathering places, open spaces, pedestrian and bike connections for all members of the community, including youth, families, and seniors.
And thanks, Sean. And so I'm going to go over a few of our workshop number 1 themes. So workshop number 1 is what we polled you about in the little poll we had. It was a virtual workshop that consisted of a video presentation and an accompanying online survey to get some public input as part of our kind of initial steps for this Village Center Master Plan. The survey questions covered some demographics and then some specific questions about what you all wanted to see as like desired uses, amenities, and that type of thing at these village centers. So you're able to provide feedback on just one of the village centers or all of them, as many as you wanted. And so some of the following slides will cover some of the overall themes we heard across all the village centers, and we'll get into some more like specific feedback for each of the village centers we're talking about tonight in the next section. Next slide. So respondents were asked to select up to 3 of the most important topics that they wanted to see addressed in the master plan, as well as up to 3 public realm improvements they would most like to see. So what you're seeing here is like across all the village centers, what were kind of the big takeaway topics people wanted to see addressed. It was pedestrian-oriented design, local business preservation, and then design and community character. So fitting in with the existing community, the existing character in the surrounding neighborhood. And then in terms of public realm improvements, respondents really wanted to see more landscaping, so trees and planting, some streetscape improvements, which could include better sidewalks, more benches, crosswalks, things of that nature, and then some additional parks, plazas, or open space. And then this was more varied across the village centers, but there was some also like strong interest for bicycle connections and bike parking, as well as pedestrian connections, which it was more selective, like where those things were highly rated, but we did hear some interest in those as well. Next slide. And then respondents were also asked to select up to 3 uses and amenities that they wanted to see at these village centers. And then the types of housing that were most like applicable to each village center. So in terms of uses and amenities, a lot of respondents really wanted to see some restaurants and cafes, neighborhoods serving retail or shopping, and then grocery store and health food options. Those were kind of the top picks amongst those. There was again a very strong want to see some of the existing neighborhood serving businesses remain. And then in terms of housing, the overall, most popular was mixed use housing, which typically consists of ground floor retail and then housing above. And then a little more selectively at certain village centers, there was an interest in senior housing and affordable housing. Next slide.
All right, well, thank you, Angela and Sean. I'll talk about the overall design concepts next for all village centers. As Sean indicated earlier, the master plan will include objective design standards. So these standards will provide guidance and requirements that all future development needs to follow. This will include subjects such as building heights, setbacks, step backs, and transitions. It will address the amount and location of retail and commercial. It will address building design and active building frontages, as well as standards like general location, size, and design of open space, parks, and plazas, and other public improvements such as sidewalks, landscaping, crosswalks. It will also address in detail parking ratios, location, and the design of parking. So in this presentation, we're going to be sharing design concepts today for each of the North Village centers. These design concepts are intended to identify priorities for development, public realm improvements, and open space within each of the village centers. These concepts are meant to be illustrative in terms of what might be proposed as part of future development applications, including scale, height, transitions, and connections like we just described. So what we're showing today really is just a first concept. It's intended to seek community and city feedback on how to establish goals and standards for the master plan. I do want to emphasize that there is no project proposed as part of the master plan, but rather the master plan is establishing the rule book for future proposals, and it is what will be used as future projects are proposed for each of the village centers. So according to the general plan, village centers should include a variety of residential uses in order to support diverse lifestyles, ages, and incomes so that residents can stay in the neighborhood longer. The LUT calls for an average density of up to 18 dwelling units per acre, with heights of up to 4 and 5 stories with transitions. The concepts that we're going to be showing today include an average density of up to 30 dwelling units to the acre, so it is higher, and it allows individual projects to vary in density to really enable a wide variety of housing, such as what we're showing on screen. So everything from, let me get my laser pointer, everything from single family homes or cluster single family to side-by-side duplexes, townhomes, and stacked townhomes or lived work townhomes, and then taller buildings such as mixed-use courtyard type buildings that might be 3, 4, 5 stories in height. Although we are showing an increase in density, we are not proposing any change to the overall scale of the development that was identified in the LUT. And we are requiring retail and commercial, as well as on-site open space, to be integrated within each of the developments. So those concepts will reflect those considerations. And then this next slide shows some additional different typologies, some more modern single family homes or townhomes. And then this is another type of live work and other types of multifamily courtyard type buildings. So this is, again, just the range, a range of examples of what might be envisioned in future projects for the village centers. And this diagram shows what we mean when we say neighborhood transitions. The master plan will include standards requiring step backs and a step down in height. So you see a taller building, for example, we would require it to step down to single family or smaller types of uses adjacent to existing residential. The general plan requires that between 10 and 25% of each village center include neighborhood scale, pedestrian-oriented retail, commercial, or civic uses. We heard in the first workshop and survey that the preservation of existing retail is very important. So we will be including policies to encourage preservation wherever possible. And the master plan will allow for vertical or horizontal mixed use and require active frontages along new streets with new development. So this shows the character. These images show the kinds of character that we would anticipate the guidance suggesting. We also heard through workshop number 1 that open space and public realm improvements are very important. So as I mentioned, the master plan will include requirements for the types of open spaces, plazas, courtyards, and paseos that you see in the images here. And these are will be reflected in the diagrams that we share today, the concepts for each of the village centers. And this shows some of the types of public realm improvements that the master plan will be providing guidance for. Really, the emphasis is on creating a comfortable environment for the pedestrians and cyclists. And this would include things like wider sidewalks, enhanced setbacks, landscaping, crosswalks, and bike paths. And then this is the last slide on the overall guidance for all the village centers. We understand that parking is a really important consideration, both for access and as well as just protecting adjacent residential areas. So the master plan will also provide guidance for a variety of parking options, including surface lots, on-street parking, structured parking, and then some more creative solutions such as rooftop parking, as you see in this image in the lower right. All right, well, the next part of our presentation provides an overview of the design concepts for each of the North Village centers. We will go over these very quickly just to cover the highlights. We want to make sure that we have as much time really as possible in the breakout rooms so that we can have a discussion and get your feedback. And then I do want to mention you also have the opportunity to provide written feedback following this meeting. All right, well, the first village center that we're talking about is village center number 4. This includes 2 sites located at Mathilda and Maude, and the boundaries of each of the sites are shown in red. So site A is the Sunnyvale Square Shopping Center, and site B is the neighborhood retail along East Maude. So again, in workshop number 1, through the survey, we heard that there was a need for safer bicycle infrastructure at the intersections and that bicycle parking is needed. We also heard that there was a desire for improved pedestrian access, and access is really limited because of the large number of driveways. And then the top housing types that were identified were mixed use and affordable housing. So this slide shows an illustrative design concept of how the village center at the intersection of Mathilda and Maude might evolve over the next 5 to 20 years. And these points illustrate some of the key principles that are being demonstrated in the diagram. Things like coordinating public realm improvements with the planned bike network to really facilitate walkability along both Maude and Mathilda, and ensuring that it's walkable from the adjacent employment centers. This diagram shows the corner being anchored with a 4 to 5 story mixed use building. It would include street-oriented retail along each edge. You see that in red here, and a corner plaza. And then we would include guidance to preserve the existing grocery store and retail uses. But if those were to be developed, there's an opportunity to move that so that there is active retail frontage along Maude. And then there are opportunities to include things like paseos, just again to facilitate walkability and access to transit. And this concept shows a large parking lot behind the retail building at the back of the site. And before I go away from this, I do want to just emphasize that this concept, this diagram illustrates how the village center might be redeveloped over time based on the LUT as well as community feedback. So there's no requirement for the center to redevelop, but if it were to redevelop, what we're looking for is really how to establish guidance so that we make sure that it develops according to what the community would like to see in the future. So this next slide shows, again, an illustrative concept of how the village center over to the east along Maude might evolve over the next 5 to 20 years or so. And again, there are points illustrating some of the key principles. In this case, we would imagine that there's an opportunity to create a focal point at the terminus of Sunnyvale Avenue. So there's an opportunity for an open space and articulation of the buildings and retail facing the open space. There's an opportunity to coordinate again with bike network and pedestrian and intersection improvements to improve safety and improve the chance for walkability and transit use. With any redevelopment, we'd see an opportunity to expand sidewalks, have wider sidewalks and landscaping along Maude. And then we'd envision that there would be, if new shops were to be developed, they would be developed as mixed use, again, with active frontages and outdoor dining and open space. And there is the possibility of integrating things like what we're showing here, live work, which would be live work or townhomes that could be stacked. So the yellow is showing residential over a retail base. And in this concept, we are showing a parking lot behind the building so that you're getting active uses along the street. And there's also an opportunity for parking along side streets and again, behind the buildings and along other side streets. So again, this is just a high level concept showing some opportunities of how the site might redevelop over the next 5 to 20 years or so. And these are really the concepts that we would imagine regulating through the master plan. So next I'll go through Village Center number 5 at Duane and San Rafael. There's only one Village Center at this location, and that's shown with the red boundary. It includes the Fair Oaks Shopping Center, Speedy Mexican restaurant, and there is an alley behind the shopping center adjacent to the single family. In workshop number 1, we heard that there is an interest in retaining the diversity of small businesses and the pedestrian oriented design and community character is very important. We also heard that there was an opportunity for landscaping, streetscape improvements, and open space. And the top housing types that were identified were mixed use and affordable housing. So this slide shows an illustrative concept, again, of how this village center might evolve in the future. And these are some points explaining the key principles that we would imagine regulating through the master plan. For this village center, we think that there is an opportunity to organize the village center around a central square for gathering, and this could really provide kind of a neighborhood focal point at the end of Duane Drive. So that's what we're showing here. And we're showing a 4 to 5 story mixed use center, again, with active retail around the open space and along the street edge, with expanded sidewalks along Duane. There is the opportunity, of course, coordinating with planned bicycle network and intersection improvements and public realm improvements, such as a wider sidewalk and landscaping that will all be very important to have those improvements along with any new development. And then finally, I'll mention that this concept shows duplex single family at the rear. The idea is that we want to protect the adjacent residential neighborhood and transition to that residential with smaller, lower height buildings such as single family. Back to Angela.
Yeah, I'll be going over Village Centers 6 and 7. So here we see Village Center 6 at Lakehaven and Lawrence Expressway. Existing at this site is the Lakewood Shopping Center, location A, the JWC Greenbelt at location B, Hetch Hetchy Utility Easement at location C, and then there's an existing bike and pedestrian bridge over Lawrence Expressway at location D there. And then some of the things we heard in the survey were a desire for a grocery store and healthy food options, along with neighborhood serving retail. There's an interest in improved pedestrian and bike access, including a connection to the JWC Greenbelt and to the Greenbelt across Lawrence Expressway. There's an opportunity for landscaping, streetscape improvements, and other public realm improvements as well. Next slide. So this is the illustrative diagram of how this might develop. Next slide. And some of the main ideas behind this are to kind of anchor that corner at Lakehaven and Lawrence with some of the larger, more active mixed use and commercial uses, where all of the kind of activity is, and closer to some of the public transit as well. There's an opportunity to use the utility easement to continue that green belt and then make a connection north to that existing ped and bike bridge. So kind of have the access across Lawrence to the green belt on either side, have that be a complete loop, and ultimately dead end into Lakewood Park. And then as you move closer to the existing residential areas, transition down to townhomes and single family, much kind of lower density and lower height structures. Next slide. At Village Center 7 at Fair Oaks and Tasman, in the existing site, we have the existing R&D and warehouse facility at Site A. There's the Via Apartments and some residential over retail. This is a fairly active mixed use location at Site B. There's also the Fair Oaks Station, which is on the VTA Light Rail Orange Line at Site C. And the Tasman Crossing Monument sign, just to orient, is at Site D. Some things we heard in the survey about this location was a desire for a coffee shop, restaurants, grocery, and other neighborhood retail. There's an opportunity to add some landscaping, parks, open space, and other streetscape improvements here. And the top housing types that respondents identified were mixed-use housing, affordable housing, and some senior housing. Next slide. So as we mentioned, the site to the east is already developed. So we're mostly looking at the site on the northwest corner of the intersection. Next slide. And what we're kind of showing here is, again, anchoring that corner where a lot of the activity is, and near the public transit opportunities with some retail and some, more active uses, maybe incorporating a plaza in the front and in the back, and a larger setback along Fair Oaks Avenue in order to increase walkability to the corner and to the larger apartments or mixed-use building behind. Next slide.
Great, thank you, Angela. Great presentation, guys. I appreciate all of that. So our next activity that we're going to do is we're going to be heading into breakout rooms. So all of you participants are going to be randomly distributed into about 3 breakout rooms where you'll arrive and you'll have a facilitator in that breakout room who's going to be there to help guide the discussion tonight. Next slide, please. And in that discussion, we've got a couple questions that we're primarily using just to kind of spur discussion while you guys are in there talking with everybody and providing comments and feedback. And those questions are: what do you like about the concepts that we've shown? What would you modify or add? And if there are any other things that we should consider when doing this master plan. So once you get in there, that facilitator will actually have a screen up that we'll be taking notes on. It's a little virtual whiteboard that you'll be able to see these different village center design concepts on, and we'll be able to guide you through each of these to gather feedback and comments and have a discussion. So next slide. So before going into these breakout rooms, just a couple quick housekeeping items. You'll arrive and then you'll be able to raise your hand virtually. So you'll be in there muted. And then just to facilitate the discussion, our facilitators will be able to unmute you when you raise your hand virtually. So there is a reactions function within Zoom. So you'll be able to raise your hand that way. Or if you can't find it for some reason, just raise it in the video and we'll be able to call on you with that. So you'll be able to also provide comments, feedback within the chat if you prefer to do it that way as well. But we're hoping to have a great conversation with you guys for about the next 45 minutes. And then we'll come back all together as a group and do a quick report out and send everybody on their way. So with that, let me just take a look at these rooms quick. And so we'll be able to get everybody in these rooms, and you should have a great discussion with our team here. And we'll see you guys back in about 45 minutes before we head out. So have fun, enjoy, and we'll talk to you here in a bit. Thanks. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'll wait a minute or two. I think rooms are still closing down. Great. Waiting for a few more. $20 seconds left, and then we'll do a quick breakout, recap from all the rooms, and then send you on your way. So. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for sticking around with us. Hope you guys had some great conversations and discussions on these village centers. I was hopping in some different rooms and sounded like we were having some great chats about different concepts. So it was really great to hear. So thank you for that. So before we do a wrap up here, we're going to do just a quick report back from the groups. So the facilitators from each of your rooms, we're just going to do some key takeaways, high level themes that came across from those comments and discussions you guys had. So with that, I will start with room one. I think that was Christine. So Christine, over to you.
Yes, thank you. A lot of really wonderful feedback in our group. So thank you everyone for all of your comments and feedback. There were a really wide range of discussion. There was an interest, people liked the idea of the possibility of lower scale residential adjacent to existing neighborhoods. And also there was interest in the stacked ADU and townhome concept. There were some concerns about homeless people gathering maybe in near surface parking lots when we put those behind buildings. So there were some questions about that, how to prevent that. There were also some questions about parking standards and, how to address surface parking lots and structured parking and things like that. There was an interest in protecting and preserving existing businesses and also some questions about what can we do to encourage or require certain uses to stay, such as grocery stores and retail. There were some questions about things like utilities. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it already, but an interest in affordable housing as well as for sale units. There were some questions about how to prohibit some uses. For example, in Village Center number 6, there's some concerns about noise, particularly related to nightclubs. So wanting to disallow those sorts of uses in the area, considering the amount of housing. There were some questions about traffic and just kind of balancing traffic in and out of some of these areas, considering some existing bottlenecks. And then finally, there were some questions about the city's existing plans for future bikeway improvements as part of the citywide guidance, and definitely an interest in having more connections and more greenway improvements. So I think that sums up the feedback we received. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christine. Over to room 2, which I believe was Matthew's group.
Sure. Well, we heard a lot about small businesses and the role that small businesses play in creating a sense of place and fostering community. We also heard about some unequal access in businesses, particularly the difference north of the 101 and relation to medical services in particular. We heard some concerns about the height of buildings, some concerns about traffic and parking, particularly I think it was Village Center 6, that's close to the park, if I got the number on that Village Center right. In terms of the overall concepts, I think we heard a desire for more detail about how open space is going to be accommodated, and connections to adjacent areas, as well as parking and landscaping as specific topics people wanted to see more about. And then lastly, a couple of questions about the timeline, when things would develop, as well as the impact of schools, the impact of development on schools, rather. So those were some of the themes that we heard in our room.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And last but not least, room 3 with Angela.
Yeah, so our room, we had a robust conversation about each village center, but also kind of the 4 as a whole. There was some high concern about including affordable housing, really wanting to see affordable housing in the area, or more mixed income kind of housing in these sites. There was generally a want for higher residential density overall, but there was a feeling a little bit of that the balance of where the residential density was being absorbed in the city was maybe a little uneven. There was a very large concern about losing the local businesses that are currently at the village centers, and they don't want, you know, these businesses to be lost when these things redevelop. They don't want the rents to be too high that they can't cut this kind of thing. And then just a real concern about losing the diversity of businesses, and also residents in Sunnyvale not wanting to lose that diversity, because that's a real asset to Sunnyvale.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angela. And finally, so closing out for tonight, I'm going to hand it over to Sean to go through some next steps, and then we'll adjourn. Sean?
Great. Well, thank you everybody for participating tonight. I want to thank one of our mayor, Larry Klein, for participating, and then our new council member, Linda Sell, and then also Mike Cerrone from our planning commission. Next steps, we will have the materials from tonight's meeting posted on our Village Center Master Plan website. You can take a picture of the QR code to get to the website. We have the information from the workshop from last week for the south end of town available on our website already. And if you have comments, feel free to email those directly and try to get those to me by Wednesday, February 1st. We will use your comments to refine our concepts and develop a draft master plan with objective design standards. And then we'll seek city feedback and workshops 4 through 5. And so that will mean we'll go to the Planning Commission study session and City Council study session to present the information that we received and kind of go over proposed concepts for the Village Center Master Plan. And again, thank you for participating, and my contact information is here. I'm going to take a snapshot of that. It's also on the website. If you go to that page, my email contact information is there. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions on anything, and I'll try to direct you to the right person or get your questions answered as quickly as I can. Thanks again.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everybody.